Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April meeting of the ICODR membership. It's wonderful to see all your faces, and boy, is there a lot going on. This is probably the most ICODR emails I've sent in a single week in a couple years, but just a couple things I want to note, and then I'll open it up and see if anyone else has other announcements. One, of course, the ODR forum, which is happening, I think it's June 11th at Harvard, odr2026.org. I'll put the link in. Please get your tickets soon. They're selling like hotcakes. I think the price is slated to go up on May 1. And there's an iCoder member discount, of course. So we would love to have you there. We're going to be releasing the agenda soon, but we just announced a great keynote. Beth Novak, who is the former, what was Beth's title? Deputy CTO of the United States government. Is that right, Ethan?
Something like that.
Okay, yeah, she is amazing, and she runs the Gov Lab at Northeastern University. So she's going to be a great keynote. But we have presentations lined up from professors from Harvard, from MIT. We have judges coming in from around the world. We're going to have the dean of Santa Clara Law School. We're going to have Dwight Golan, who's the leader in AI and negotiation training. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing gathering. And I see Mac has just joined us as well. Hopefully, we're going to be able to organize a showing of his new documentary. So please do everything you can to join us in Boston. I know it's a big commitment to fly out and get a hotel and all of that stuff. We have reserved a block of rooms at a nearby college, Lesley, which is right next to Harvard. So we have discounted rooms. So when you call and hear the hotel prices, don't be too scared by that. So just let me know. Visit the website. Let me know if you have any questions, and the agenda will be coming out soon. We also have a hackathon that we're doing called vibeodr.com. Check it out, please. It's going to be on the Saturday, and I think we have infinite credits donated by Anthropic for Claude. So anybody who shows up that day will be able to use Claude all day to put together some things. And we actually have some investors who are coming to evaluate all the things that we put together on the Saturday. So it's going to be a great gathering. So hopefully you can make it. The second announcement was about our new standards. They are on the iCoder homepage. If you scroll down on the homepage, you can see. I want to thank Leah and Dan for leading the effort, but very, very excited and proud that these are coming out. Leah and Dan, do you want to say a word about the guidance document?
Go ahead,
I,
Liv.
I'd like to welcome Dan to do it. It was his brilliant idea, and he helped lead the initiative. I will just say that the National Center and ICODR are excited to share them, and no doubt we assume over time they will need to be updated. But let me turn it to Dan.
Okay, well, I hadn't planned to say anything, but what I will say is this, that
Only 15 seconds required, Dan, because we're going to be talking about it in Boston for sure.
um, I think the conviction that most of us had who've worked on this is that the only way to reasonably control or manage the use of AI in dispute resolution is to do it through targeted standards and targeted guidance that address the things that make mediation, arbitration, and other third party work trustworthy. We can't control what happens at the anthropic level and at that level we can't control what's going to come down from there. But what we can control is our own behavior, and that's really what we tried to target with the guidance based on the standards of practice. Is if I'm going to use this as a third party, what do I need to know? What questions should I need to ask, etc. So hopefully it'll be useful and helpful, but we think that this is the level at which we can be really effective at saying, okay, how do we use this responsibly?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan. And I think we should probably do an iCoder meeting. Obviously, we're going to do a keynote at the ODR forum focused on this guidance document. And I think, obviously, there's so many things that are happening every day. I don't know if anybody's heard about Anthropic's new model, Mythic or
Mhm.
Capybara. This thing is supposedly so powerful that it's found exploits in all the browsers, all the operating systems in the world. They can't release it because it's too dangerous. So we're in a very important area facing many, many questions. So Dan, I want to thank you and Leah for putting this together. I think this end up being iCoder's most important contribution to this discussion. Okay, and I do want to get to Joseph, but I also want to acknowledge Chris and Morenike for launching our new LinkedIn page, and I put a link to it in the chat. This is a great resource for us. So Chris, do you want to say a word about that? I don't see Morenike on.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Hugely appreciate the work that the board did to figure out the right way to roll out something that allows us to get all these great achievements sort of out more broadly into the space. For example, what was it? The new standards guidance. I think within the first afternoon of it going up on LinkedIn had about 146 impressions on it. So I think those types of things are already going to start paying dividends. And what is going to help it even more and more and more is please go to that link that Colin has, and please, at the very minimum, click follow. The more followers we have, that means the more that work is done there. It gets posted into other people's feeds. So in the same way you're tired of seeing other people force things on you, force it back on them through iCoder. So please go onto the iCoder page, click follow, and if you have any role within iCoder or have had one that's on your resume link, please go and edit that role so that you are linking it to the actual job, to the iCoder page itself. There's a help video that was sent around by all those who are associated with the board. If you need help on it, feel free to reach out to me to figure out how you actually get your job identified. But please, number one, click the link and click follow today. And number two, if you've had a role that references iCoder anywhere on your LinkedIn profile, please edit it to link to the new page. You'll know you're linked when you got the logo. So those are two biggest things we can do to make sure that all this work that's been being done is getting out there, getting seen, and able to get used by the community that needs it the most. So thank you for
Excellent.
that moment.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for taking the initiative. Okay, let's go to our guest of the hour. Joseph, thank you so much for being here with us. And I know everybody is really excited. And look at the slide. You're even talking about operationalizing iCoder standards. So,
well, the 2022 one.
The 2022 one, that's right. It only came out yesterday.
I wasn't aware.
So
No,
it's fine. It's fine. Please. So let me hand the conch to you. So please take it from here.
Okay, so I assume my screen is being visible.
Yep.
Perfect.
Visible.
So thank you everyone for having me. I think most of us are here today because the field of ODR is at a tipping point. I think we're seeing a flood of AI judges in quotes and robo mediators promising to solve disputes in minutes or seconds, which on paper sounds efficient, but speed is not justice. And LLMs are non-deterministic. So probability is not truth. What we've been doing for the past 3 years is we've been building TheMediator.ai that has followed a different path. Very early on, we came to believe that an intelligent, private, third party could be a positive echo in the room. A presence that does not dominate the conversation, but helps shape it towards something calmer, clearer, and more productive. That was really the seed of it. So we didn't start with how fast can we settle a case. Really what we dived into, okay, because we're mostly software engineers at heart. So is how do we build a digital room that is safer, fairer, and more transparent than a physical one. And that distinction matters because one approach optimizes for closure, the other is optimizing for a process. And today I want to show you how we have operationalized the 2022 ICODR standards, not as a policy document, but as a hard-coded architectural constraint. I've provided a QR code, so I won't be showing the user interface of the mobile application, but you can scan that QR code and then you could easily install the beta of TheMediator.ai for iOS and Android. And I've also added 2 links. One is for safety. I think some of you guys might be interested in, and the landing page as well. I assume you guys could see my cursor, right? Yeah. Okay. So to understand our system, we have to first define what we're building, and more importantly, what we're refusing to build. So there's a lot of confusion going on now in the AI/LLM to service. So is this an AI tool? Is it making the decision for me? Is it a decision maker? Is it a party to the dispute, or is it giving legal guidance, which absolutely not the case? Or is it quietly doing more than anyone realizes? So what we refuse to build is as important as we are building. So I'm going to go into what it is. So TheMediator.ai is private, it's structured, and 2-party facilitation. So there's non-binding summaries, and I emphasize on non-binding, and proposed options. And it's designed for everyday disputes. Like my neighbor is playing loud music, my kids are studying, I'm trying to avoid a confrontation. This comes in as an easy way to actually handle that case. What it is not, it's not legal advice, it's not adjudication or enforcement, and it's not suitable for abuse dynamics. So we defined the mediator as a private, structured facilitation environment. It is designed for everyday disputes, as I gave one example, and high volume civil disputes, the kind that clogs up small claims in courts. It provides non-binding summaries and generates options. It helps the parties organize their thoughts. It's like a dynamic scribe that listens, structures, and reflects. And our system is built as an orchestration layer across fine-tuned models, foundation models, and proprietary components. And governance here is treated as the product feature. So we don't begin by having the machine declare what the outcome should be. We begin by structuring the dialogue, clarifying the narrative, and protecting the parties from escalation. If you guys have any questions, it would probably be answered in the following slides, but we could use as well the chat, and then just not to forget the question.
Yeah, Joseph, I'm urging people to put things in the chat, and then when you finish your presentation, then we can go through the questions
Perfect.
that are posed there. Yeah.
So crucially, here is our negative space, the things we architecturally prevent from the system from doing. So it's not legal advice. We strip out the ability for the LLM or the LLM to predict court outcomes or cite statutes. So we focus on interests and not rights. And the system doesn't have a gavel, so it cannot impose a penalty or force a settlement. And for abuse, we built hard boundaries, which I will show you later, that shut the system down when domestic violence or coercion patterns are detected. So if we're not the judge and we're not the lawyer, then who are we? This is where we locate responsibility. We adopt what's called the 5th party model. As you know, the first and the second parties are the people in the dispute. The third party is the mediator. And the fourth party is the technology platform itself. I think many of you guys use WhatsApp or email for mediation. But there's a missing layer. Because once you introduce AI or LLMs, the proper term here would be LLMs, into that system, someone has to take responsibility for how that environment behaves. And that's the role of the 5th party. So we're not making decisions for the parties, we're designing the conditions under which those decisions are made. And that's that's what the slide represents. Each of these layers you see here, language, symmetry, privacy, governance, these are not features, they're controls. For example, we control how language is presented so it remains clear, accessible, and reduces misunderstanding across different parties and contexts. So we control how each party is treated, ensuring symmetry in tone, structure, and opportunity to express themselves at their own leisure. It's a mobile app, right? You could use it anytime you want. And the truth is time is the best healer. So if the dispute is an emotional one, the LLM is always present whenever that person is ready. So we control how language is presented, so it remains clear, accessible, and it reduces misunderstanding across different users and contexts. And we control how each party is treated, ensuring symmetry in tone, structure, and opportunity to express themselves. We control also what is seen and what is filtered, maintaining boundaries between parties instead of blindly passing messages through. And we also control how every decision is recorded. So the entire process is auditable, not just observable. So when we say the fifth party, what we really mean is this: we are responsible for the integrity of the environment, not the outcome. So not who is right or wrong, but whether the process itself is fair, safe, or consistent. And once you look at it that way, the role of the LLM becomes much clearer. It's not replacing mediation, it's shaping the space in which the mediation happens. Sure, governance logs, yeah, okay, we covered that. So as I mentioned, our job is really the environment design. And language is one of the most important parts of that environment. Because most conflicts don't break down at the level of intent, they break down at the level of interpretation. So what we're seeing here are the controls we apply to reduce that gap. So first is the native language support. We treat language as a first-class surface, not a translation layer. That means users can engage in their own language. So like the mediator can actually, you could have a German, this is a real use case actually. One of the mediators speaks, one of the parties speaks German and the other party speaks English. And they continued speaking in their own language to the mediator. So users can engage in their own language with mediation flows adapted to it. It's not just converted. And the goal here is simple. We want to remove friction at the point of entry. The second is plain language mode. So conflict already carries emotional load. So we reduce cognitive load and we structure responses in short sentences, simpler terminology, and clearer framing. Not to oversimplify the issue, but to make sure both parties can actually process what's being said. And third is the comprehensive checks. So we don't assume understanding, we verify it. The system is continuously confirms that both sides are interpreting things in a similar way. Forgive my French accent. And when there's a gap, it slows the process down and clarifies before moving forward. So again, we're not deciding what the parties should agree on. We're designing how clearly they can understand each other while they get there. Because in mediation, misunderstanding is often the conflict itself. So inside this environment, the LLM is acting as a facilitator and a scribe. So it's not a judge, as I've mentioned more than once, and it's not an authority. The role is to take what is often emotional, fragmented, or reactive and reshape it into something that can actually be worked with. And this only works if the language itself is carefully designed. Because language carries assumptions, and those assumptions shape how people interpret the system. For example, if a system says resolve dispute, it implies a final outcome, and it's possibly imposed. Another example, if it says user error, it assigns blame. If it says like verdict, it starts to resemble a legal judgment. So instead, we make a very deliberate choices. So we use like conclude mediation, which keeps the focus on process and voluntary exit. Or pause for safety, which prioritizes protection over fault. And for example, agreement proposed, which preserves agency and consent. These are small changes in wording, but they fundamentally change how the system is perceived and experienced. And this is where equality comes in. Because both parties are exposed to the same structure, the same tone, and the same constraint, no one is blamed and no one is overruled. And no one is led to believe the system is deciding for them. So again, the LLM is not determining outcomes, it is shaping how communication is framed so that both sides can engage on an equal footing. I'm not going to read the slides. I think you guys could read it to clarify basically what I'm saying as well. And finally, the core principle, which is human-centric consent. Governance here isn't just a terms of service link. It's a product feature. Humans retain full control over the implementation of the outcome. The LLM can propose hundreds of options, but it cannot finalize one. That power remains exclusively with the parties, with the humans, the parties involved. So now transparency, this is the hardest technical challenge. How does the LLM know enough to help without knowing too much? So you think of it like a mediator who hears everything, but carefully controls what is shared between rooms. So we use a split state architecture. You have the backend, the brain, the controller, sees the full context, the admissions, the history, the private notes, so it can make logical connections. And then the filtering layer, this is our firewall in technical terms. It enforces privacy policies before data leaves that server, the controller, the backend. And the client view, let's say party A, only sees what party A is authorized to see. Even if the LLM wanted to leak a secret, that layer would strip it out. So it's like a double layer that confirms that no information that shouldn't be shared to the other party is shared. So and we preserve the full context for reasoning, but enforce scoped views for delivery. You guys can ask more about this later if you want, because that's really here the bulk of it. So just to make the distinction concrete, on the left, you will see, so this is a JSON object. So, but I mean, it's fairly easy to understand. So you have it determines facts, applies laws, and imposes outcomes. That's the role of courts. On the right, you have facilitation. So our role, we manage turn taking, we improve clarity and tone, and we surface the interests of each. And as the quote says, we avoid rights-based prediction. We focus on interest-based facilitation to enable voluntary agreement. And this taxonomy dictates every line of code we write. And finally, accountability. Trust is good and artifacts are better. So we implement governance as code. every safety decision creates an immutable audit record. And this is a very small snippet that you see here on the artifact schema on the left. And now we have an audit record for later on. So if our system pauses a mediation, we log exactly why, which policy version it was, that in this case coercion was detected, what was the confidence score, and what was the action taken by the controller, which is the block. And these logs are separable from the private chat content. This means we can audit the process integrity without violating the party's privacy. This is defense in depth for online dispute resolutions. So, this is also part of SafeGate. So I think this is a good time to bring us to the ICODR standards. So we use them as our product requirements document. So you have how do we handle language accessibility? How do we prevent bias in terminology? And how do we handle data privacy? And how do we prove the system is working? And this brings us to our flagship safety mechanism, which we call SafeGate. So I'm sure you guys have heard of in the loop versus on the loop. So SafeGate is strictly in the loop. It is not a reporting button, but it's a hard architectural gate. It works in 3 steps. It detects. Every message is analyzed in real time for threats or coercion or self-harm and so forth. This is a fixed set of constraints that it looks for. And then 2, it decides, do we apply a server-side enforcement policy or not? And 3, we log it. So we record the decision. And this is before the fact enforcement. It's before the fact enforcement. And no hazardous message ever leaves our server. So if it comes in, it gets evaluated, it doesn't necessarily get sent back to party B. And so we're 3 years in the making here. And we didn't arrive at this design immediately. Early versions either overblocked or allowed escalation to slip through. SafeGate is the result of multiple iterations trying to balance intervention with user agency. Many systems in this space are optimizing for settlement efficiency or claim resolution. We are optimizing for emotional de-escalation and voluntary agreement in everyday disputes. Our first design question was not how to settle faster, as I previously mentioned. It was how to prevent the system itself from becoming a carrier of harm. So let's start with accessibility. So access to justice often dies at the language barrier. If you have to translate your trauma into a second language, you are already at a disadvantage. So we built native language support as a first-class surface. The LLM thinks in the context of the user's language. It facilitates a Spanish speaker in Miami with the same nuance as an English speaker in London. And that was something that we really had to go into and test. In Quebec, it's fairly easy to find multilinguals. So most of the test cases were focused on that. So we also enforce plain language mode. So the system simplifies legalese into short, structured sentences, reducing cognitive load and ensuring that informed consent is actually informed. And this is really the innovation I am most proud of. We call it forked UI. So in a normal chat app, if someone sends a thread, the victim sees it and has to report it. The harm is already done. Like it's way too, like it's after the fact. In our case, prevention is better than cure. So basically, it prevents it from actually reaching the other party. TakeGate manages that. So we fork the experience to protect the target. And did I read this? Yes. Okay. Exception, imminent harm signal. Okay. Yeah. So, in brief terms, the sender sees an active safety warning. They are told exactly what is wrong and asked to rewrite it. This is the educational moment. The target sees nothing. They see a neutral mediation paused status. They don't know really what happened with party A. So we protect the target's peace of mind, and we prevent the AI from becoming a vector for abuse. So we stop this ping pong of escalation before it starts. And every system like this is a set of trade-offs: full automation versus human escalation, privacy versus contextual reasoning, intervention versus user autonomy. So we consistently bias toward safety and procedural integrity, even if it reduces resolution rates. I mean, our objective, again, is not to increase resolution, because in the end, TheMediator.ai does not enforce whatever outcome it sets out. It's not legally binding, and I'm sure all mediators know this. Right. I'm trying to remember this presentation was supposed to occur a month ago, so some of these I'm trying to refresh where I've reached.
Right.
I know you care deeply about how language shapes power, so we audited our entire UI to remove bias. So we don't say resolve dispute, which implies a forced fix. We say conclude mediation, which emphasize voluntary participation. Other cases, we don't use user error, which blames the human. We say pause for safety, framing the interruption as a protective measure. And Adela, our creative director, played a massive role with a legal team to actually go through these. Like, for example, we don't say a verdict. We say an agreement proposed. So words create reality, and by hard coding these terms, we prevent the LLM from hallucinating authority it doesn't have. Now, of course, we have to know when to stop. We are not the police, and we are not therapists. We've defined hard boundaries, obviously. So limited rewrites. So if a user fails to fix their toxic message after 2 attempts, we terminate the sessions. That's it. We do not facilitate abuse. If one of the users, if the LLM detects self-harm or violence, like an imminent harm, we trigger a hard stop and refer the user to human resources. So we don't want the bad effect from creating a domino effect to the other party. And so we measure our success not by resolution rates, as mentioned, which can pressure people into bad deals, but by safety rates. So intervention frequency, how many rewrites, and the process integrity, obviously with our logs and so forth. For privacy, I should mention this. It's obvious on our website. I mean, I'm giving more information here that is available on our website because different target audience. But after a mediation ends, everything from the server, all content generated by users and the outcome is automatically deleted. So within those 30 days, either party could export a PDF, because afterwards it's non-existent. What we do keep are the logs of any imminent harm or any messages that was triggered. So we leave those. but not the content or the messages themselves. In addition, using the TheMediator.ai, you don't even have to give your real name. So I could say, let's say Colin gives me a nickname, and I'm aware of it. We could proceed with that. So we really don't ask any personal information from the parties. Really, our objective is to facilitate disputes. Think of it as some of us have called it like it's a noble cause, right? Trying to use LLMs for use cases. People are using it for all sort of things, but I think this is a special use case which solves people-to-people disputes, which I think the world really needs. So we built the mediator to prove that AI or LLMs can be constrained by ODR values. We built it to be the fifth party you can trust. And really, our ask to you guys, leaders in the ICODR, is simple, like help us define the minimum safety control set for this industry. And help us turn these principles into a checklist that every AI, not just us, must meet. And I think this is one of the core things that was suggested. So again, we optimize for safety and procedural integrity over mere resolution. And we love your partnership in setting that standard. Because if we don't define that baseline now, it will be defined implicitly by systems optimized for speed over safety. And let me see if I still have that. Yes. Okay. So either you could use the QR to try it, or this is a video as well that just tell me if it's coming through properly. So this is a use case where I think it was roommates. A roommate is trying to do most of the chores that the other party isn't doing, and this gives you an example of a back and forth between the two. So I understand this right, to help you resolve your rent. Okay, this is a rent payment issue. So I'll let this video play for itself. So this is the other party. It's the other side of so the app is night mode and not. So I've used in this case the dark mode for party B. Now you might notice here. Do you notice the predefined answers there? So once the LLM, this is something we added recently. I mean, end of 2025. When the dispute has turned into a negotiation, the LLM is clever enough to either make it propose predefined answers, and there's a lot of tricks that the LLM here plays, and this is part of the post training in some cases. And it's the best way to actually try it is to download the app itself and experience the LLM. So I think this was my last slide. I'm sure some of you might be wondering, how does this fit into the broader mediation ecosystem, especially when the orchestration of LLMs alone isn't enough. If a mediation doesn't reach a satisfactory outcome, we don't leave the parties at a dead end. We guide them towards human mediators who are relevant to their situation. based on region or type of dispute. And we're actively building that network now. So escalation is not a fallback in theory, it's a continuation in practice. So you can find on our website at TheMediator.ai, and there's a link for mediators at the top. This ties into a broader point. So we don't see ourselves as replacing mediators. In fact, we see this as expanding access to mediation. So most conflicts today never reach a professional mediator at all. They either fester or disappear unresolved. And we operate in that early stage, and when needed, we route people towards professionals with context already structured, so they don't have to start again from zero, let alone having to pour emotions during this whole process, so they don't have to restart it all over from scratch with a human mediator. So in terms of how users actually begin, the process is intentionally simple. One person initiates a mediation through the mobile app. It provides the context and invites the other party. From there, both participants continue asynchronously on their phones. There's no scheduling, no coordination overhead, and no pressure to respond in real time. So we've also provided, this is coming out soon, where mediators that have their own website can integrate TheMediator.ai into their website as well. And then we choose a web to mobile flow deliberately. So initiation tends to happen in a moment of intent, and the web is frictionless for that. But mediation itself unfolds over time. So mobile becomes the natural environment for ongoing interaction. You have push notifications. You can do it. If I feel like responding at 3 a.m, I am able to do so on my mobile phone. Whereas the web, they could just close the browser and it's gone. So in real world situations, the other party doesn't always join immediately or at all. And that's part of reality of conflict. We've designed invitations to be simple and non-confrontational, and when only one party engages initially, the system still helps clarify their position and prepare for a resolution. And as we build our mediator network, quality and relevance is key. We're reaching out to mediators based on region and specialization. And over time, we'll introduce feedback loops based on actual mediation outcomes. And the goal here is to connect users to the right mediator for their specific situation, not just any available one. And when a human mediator does step in, they don't walk in blind. Like we give them there is user consent, obviously. They'll receive a structured summary of the interaction rather than raw scripts. And that gives them context immediately without reopening the entire conflict from scratch. And another important aspect is that everything is asynchronous. That's a core design choice. It removes scheduling friction and allows people to engage when they're ready, which is often critical in emotionally charged situations. So if we zoom out, our role is not just an LLM, a fine-tuned LLM mediator. We see ourselves as an entry layer into conflict resolution, a system that captures early friction, stabilizes communication, and routes towards resolution, whether that remains within the system or escalates to a human. And ultimately, the goal is simple. It's not to replace mediation or mediators, but to make sure more conflicts actually reach it. And we hope that we reach that objective.
Fantastic.
And I think, yeah.
Joseph, thank you so much grist for the mill. So many exciting concepts. Thank you for walking through this. I find myself in particular fascinated by this idea of SafeGate. But we have lots of comments in the chat. So if you don't mind, I might roll through some of these quickly and
yes,
you can respond.
Sure.
All right, great. Let's start at the top. Katerina asked, is the platform limited to disputes between two parties? And
yes.
And have you thought about expanding it to other kinds of cases where there may be multiple parties?
For now, it's two parties. already, because I'm going to have to get into a little bit technical. LLMs weren't designed to be a multi-party system.
Mm-hmm.
LLMs by default are post-trained to be me and the LLM.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask the question already to post-train. So we obviously had to post-train and fine-tune our own model. We're using a multitude of models, but the ones that we had to fine-tune, the LLM always kept confusing. Like if you use Claude or Anthropic or ChatGPT, at some point it starts getting confused about which party is which.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I'm not gonna get too much into like some of the secret sauce, but it's already complicated for two parties.
Sure.
Getting more parties is going to be, I think, even more, but it's not impossible.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things you said too was concerns about confidentiality, and if the model gets confused and shares private information shared from one party to another party, that could be disastrous. So I do understand that. Yeah. Graham asked, what legal jurisdictions has the Mediator AI been trained in, or is it jurisdiction independent?
No. So obviously, every jurisdiction has its own rules and its own legal. In cases like these, there is a fallback to the human mediator.
Mm-hmm.
So if because take the force, for example, every jurisdiction handles it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
In mediation, usually both parties need to agree to that mediator. Both parties need to agree that this mediation will happen, knowing full well that whatever outcome comes out is not enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we can't enforce it, only they can. It's just basically coming up with, I don't even want to use the word agreement, but it comes up with a template as what's fair to follow. And the outcome actually was the basis of throughout this mediation discussion, the back and forth between the mediator and the two parties.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to jurisdiction, there is a very high, it depends. I think the LLM will decide, depending on that use case, if it would need to forward it to a mediator.
Got it.
A human mediator in that case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think hybrid models where we're using AI in connection with humans, I think, especially human mediators, I think that is, I like that approach a lot. A couple of people made comments about the appreciation for how much thought you've put into the language on the platform.
I can't read the chats, by the way, so I'm counting on you.
Okay, no worries. So I'm going through them systematically here. But focusing on word choice is important. But obviously, when you deal with multilingual situations, there is a lot of subtlety in negotiation. And one thing I learned from my friend Alberto, who runs ODR Latino America, is mediación is a little bit different than mediation. The meanings are slightly different. And in Spanish, they still use conciliación, where we don't really say conciliation in the U.S. anymore. That word's kind of been folded into mediation. I don't know about French, but there is a lot of nuance.
It exists in French.
Yeah, conciliation. So, I mean, it's interesting to think about all of that nuance, and presumably the AI can do a pretty good job with it. But I do appreciate all the attention you've paid to language, because I think without video information, the importance of language is magnified. Colum asked, and I think you answered this a little bit. I mean, is this a synchronous platform? Is it an asynchronous platform? Is it a combination of both? How do you see that from your?
No, it is synchronous.
Synchronous.
It is synchronous. Yes.
Right. So you communicate, and then the LLM responds in real time.
Exactly. It's one step at a time. Yeah. So it's not both of them are bombarding the LLM at the same time. And we looked at it from the other point of view. We looked at it like realistically. I bumped my neighbor's car by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a dispute with him. I probably don't want to confront him. And so what would happen is let's say John, my neighbor, would receive a message And we have extremely carefully made sure that that SMS that they get on their phone number, because assuming they don't have the mobile app yet, they probably don't even understand what the TheMediator.ai does. Is to softly ease them into the bad news and how to mediate, and they could do that. But the whole point, if I call John, and John hears about this bad news that I smashed his new Porsche, for example, it's likely going to get heated pretty quickly, and the whole point is to stop this problem early on.
Sure. I think the engagement to prevent escalation is a very interesting feature of your design. Absolutely. Early engagement. Yeah. So I'm sorry to be a little bit pushy here, but I know we're running out of time. There's so many great questions. SafeGate raised a lot of interest in the chat.
I hope.
And Chris, I may go to you to rephrase your questions. I mean, just so you can elaborate. Chris, obviously, a couple people on this call have just written a book about AI governance, Chris included. But one of the questions he asked, and I'm a little bit unclear on what this means, but you might know. Chris asked, is there a fundamental difference between SafeGate and the constitutional AI strategy? And Joseph, if you need clarification, you can ask Chris. But if you know what that means, you can respond.
Is it like rebranding? Like, is it? Can you just clarify just briefly on constitutional AI?
Yeah, Chris.
So the constitutional AI is Anthropic's concept where the system will still run, it'll still have its post-training, but then it'll actually have ethical choices made after. And I think this also ties a little bit into Leah's concept where you essentially have built your system with a system in the loop model, even though it's really operating as a system on the loop model in a human in the loop system. And so I'm curious, in your version of a system in the loop model with constitutional check, which is your SafeGate being it, is there any difference in that?
So there's an overlap in spirit, but the implementation is different. So now that you mentioned it, I remember constitutional AI is about guiding the model's behavior during generation. SafeGate is outside the model as an architectural control layer. So it's outside that model. It evaluates messages before they reach the other party and applies policy decisions and logs those actions. So it's less about shaping the model's reasoning and more about enforcing boundaries at the system level.
Yeah, I guess if there's been an update to implementation, that'd be something I'm happy to talk about offline, but I think the constitutional component is actually a post-production check that now triggers a regeneration. But yeah, if that's different, if that's become different, it's happy to chat.
Yes, sure. Something we get, but just to mention, that's before it reaches the LLM.
Yeah.
So we
again, not to cut you off, Joseph, I'm just cognizant of the time here. I think Joseph is also the CTO, so he can talk to the technical aspects of the platform in much greater detail. Joseph, we may want to have you back to have a deeper conversation about that. I think one of the things that struck me, and I think Colin raised this too, like kind of language use is often up to the parties. I know that you said that the participants don't really know what's happening behind the scenes, what all of the sort of governing regulatory mechanisms that are in SafeGate that's ensuring that you're not passing along, threats or insults or coercive communication. But there is sort of an agency question there. And do you want to address that? I mean, is that a tension that you've thought about? I mean, your goals are obviously noble, but it's an interesting thing to think about the AI having that sort of, governance role to play in monitoring tone. And making and sort of deciding what kind of communications would be okay and what kind of communications wouldn't be okay.
So I think we have. I'm not sure if I put them. So basically, so safety is defined at the level of interaction integrity. It's not a moral judgment.
I
So we're
see.
looking at signals like coercion, threats. There are eight different bullet points that
Hmm.
it actually checks for, like their pattern that collapse dialogue, for example. If the other party is just not interested or just doesn't answer, obviously we take into consideration many things, the time zone of the other user. We don't always so. I try not to get too much into it, but we kind of play on the psychology of the end user as well.
Mm,
So the time zone, if it's between working hours, off working hours, and there is a time when we send a nudge. The second, so let's say you didn't respond. The second nudge you get is going to be very carefully calculated
mm.
by the system, and so we're looking at like it's less about what people believe and more about whether the exchange remains viable.
I see.
This is
I
this
see.
is this is concerning the safe, like who defines safe, right? It's
Sure,
it's
sure.
it's
Yeah, I mean, I know some mediators that are perfectly happy to have the parties insult each other. I mean, it's their negotiation, but I know other mediators that shut that down right off the bat, you know. So I think it's an interesting question, and the role of AI in that facilitation. I mean, we're going to need to learn more about it. I do
the,
want to,
the
please.
parties.
Yeah.
Just to answer that one a little more. So the parties absolutely own their language.
Hmm.
We're not replacing their voice. We're shaping how it's delivered across the boundary to the other.
Sure.
So in traditional mediation, a mediator already reframes, slows down,
Right.
redirects language when needed. So we're doing sort of something similar, but consistently at scale, right? The goal
Sure.
isn't to neutralize expression, it's to prevent escalation that shuts the process down. So
I got it. Yeah.
we preserve intent, but we manage transmission.
Fascinating.
But it,
Fascinating.
but it,
Yeah, I know we only have 1 minute left here. I do want to highlight what Leah said in the chat. She said, Joseph, thank you for explicitly using the ODR standards for platform design, fabulous remodeling and strengthening ODR delivery. We do have, now that you're using the standards, we would love to have you to feature you at NCTDR and ICODR as, if you're an organizational member, please, we could put you and say, hey, this is someone who's implemented the ICODR standards. So thank you for that. Obviously, there's a lot of thought that's gone into that, but there's an enormous amount of thought that's gone into the construction of this platform. And thank you so much for sharing it with all of us today. These are key questions, Joseph, about the future of mediation and dispute resolution. And it's very gratifying to see that you've taken this so seriously and thought about it for years. I think the safe gate concept is really revolutionary. I've not really heard about anything that is well thought out as that in the AI mediation context. So kudos to you for that. But you're getting lots and lots of comments in the chat. Fantastic work. Product looks awesome. So thank you so much for being with us here today, Joseph. Thank you for all your good work. And we really welcome you to come back and participate in this community. The questions and things
my
that you're
pleasure.
wrestling with are the kinds of things that we think about every day. So everyone's saying super interesting, fantastic work. So it was wonderful.
And thank you very much for having me. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks, Colin, and everyone.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everyone. Keep up the good work. We'll talk again soon, and have a nice weekend.